Keep in mind that Reuters and AP are pretty much responsible for every story that, if not you've seen, because things have definitely changed over the internet, but at least your parents or the people that taught you saw. Literally every single piece of information came over those two wires. And in my mind, the fact that those two wires were exclusive and that we don't talk about that in a lot of history is a pretty big thing to me. So that was in 1851, the second wire. And just to kind of, that same year, the New York Times was born, in the sense of they went 6 days a week. And then 3 years later, war breaks out, of course, and the paper goes 7 days a week. Just a few months later, just to tell you an idea of the idea of a newspaper succeeding was going to be, our propaganda is newer than your propaganda. And so the Herald ended up losing out to the Times because the Times had established this underground information wire network. Arctic, famous ship that sunk. A lot of weird things about the Arctic I won't go into, but I'll just quickly say, for whatever reason, it was working like super extra overtime, like steaming faster than it was even rated to go, and more importantly, steaming more frequently than it was meaning to go. And it turns out that once this thing sank, a whole bunch of things kind of opened up. And I think the first Civil War is probably tracks back a little bit to the people that were on this ship. But there's actually more juicy stuff than just that. That same year, keep in mind, this is 1854. 5 years later, Major Robert Anderson commanded the surrender of Fort Sumter in North Carolina. Anderson arrived in New York as a rallying figure carrying the 33-star flag that flown above the fort. Major Robert Anderson commanded Fort Sumter after 33 hours of bombardment, which he had set the fort aflame. Anderson agreed to evacuation terms and lowered the Stars and Stripes on Tax Day, or April 14th, I should say, 1861. And on the right, you're seeing the 33-starred flag that rose then. And just to speed this along, I'm suggesting to you, I talked about this a lot in the last stream, but I'm suggesting to you that Major Robert Anderson actually threw this war on purpose, that he went down to this place and purposely saw to the surrender of Fort Sumter by helping people who wanted to revolt set the place on fire. And that by doing that, he was able to come back to New York because 5 days later, okay, so first of all, before I tell you what happened 5 days later, during all this time, this dude, Thaddeus Owens, who looks a lot like Lincoln, but Thaddeus Owens was passing the Revenue Act of 1861, which basically led to the Confiscation Act of 1862, which is really at the heart of the why you pay taxes, or why some of you pay taxes. I don't know how many of you are paying. I know we're not going to tell each other, but there's the entire, hey, let's enslave ourselves with 40% of all of our life force and give it to a central bureaucracy of vampires and let them just fight over it. And then if they get some of the blood that belongs to us, maybe after they're finished drinking, they'll bring it back to us and they'll let us buy it from them so we can put it back in our fucking veins. And I'm sure it'll be just as clean as the time that we gave it to them through evaporating through our sweat, because the red blood cells are evaporating. And that's how you sacrifice blood. You sacrifice blood with your labor. With your labor. And we were raised by people that are like, 40% of our labor needs to go to this fucker. This fucker right here. Look at his face. He's grumpy. He's like, give me 40% of your labor. And we did. We fucking did. We fucking did. And you know why we did? We did because we had these guys. We had the biggest party ever. What did I tell you 5 days later? Look, April 20th. April 20th, 1861. Let's go back, see if James got it right. April 14th, 1861. James, you lied. It was 6 days. Okay. 6 days later, right? What happens? Major Robert Anderson set Fort Sumter on fire. 6 days later, shows up to the largest party America has ever seen. The Woodstock of 1861, ladies and gentlemen. 150 years ago today, the largest group of Americans ever gathered in one place up to that time, filling the streets around Union Square in support of the Union cause. Do you know why they had the Union cause? Because this man came in and told you the perils of how him and all his men who were perfectly fine, he's like, Me and my men who miraculously didn't suffer a scratch were brutally attacked by the racist Confederate underlords. We call them underlords. And that clearly we must respond to this monstrosity. And that when you own the telegraph lines, when you've established the means of communication, you get to say whatever the heck you want to say. James, tell me more. The original Gangs of New York was a call to partay. It was, hey, let's have a pillage. Some of you guys have heard of 9/11, so this is going to sound familiar. That the very first pillage actually was the invitation of Gangs of New York. This was a fez club where you were given a free coat, free hat, free boots, free pants, free guns, free money, free food, free shelter, free protection, free coffee, free whiskey, free looting, and some of you will win a free horse. And this is what it said. It said, dude, come to our rally. We will give you all of these things, and that we will protect our livelihood. We will protect what is precious to us from the evil, sacred, racial confederacy that miraculously returned our war hero completely unharmed after he burnt down Fort Sumter and left with all his men, and none of them were harmed. Clearly, these people are evil. Clearly, this is the worst thing ever. And we get free hat. And we get a free coat. And the ladies are looking at us going, oh my God, that guy's got a gun. And he's got pants. And back then, if you had a gun and you had pants, man, you are getting laid. You are freaking on top of it. If you have cuffs, if you've hemmed your pants, you're just like, man, I am fucking hemming my pants, hemming and hawing. You were on top of it. And so the idea of just simply open up a Walmart and saying, hey, all you got to do is come muster. And then as long as you bring your gun, then we're going to take you on a little trip later and we're going to convince you to shoot people. And anyone who's not wearing the same shirt as you is going to die. And that we're going to play the same theme song on both sides, but none of you are going to notice. And people in New York were like, oh, sounds fucking good, man. You said I'm getting a hat, right? I'm getting a hat because I didn't go to college and I see this got a fez. And I think I could just, when I was looking, I could move that fez from the left side to my right side. And that would be worth it. And if I win a horse, oh my God, if I win a horse, if I could win a horse. And this is really how the Civil War started, guys. Additionally to this, remember this giant party, the giant Woodstock? So that dude, the Sumter dude, let's get his name right. Robert Anderson, the Sumter dude, brings back the 33 stars and stripes of the flag that flew over Fort Sumter. But he brought it back to a town that had already installed a 13-starred colony. That the people in New York were actually already building the New World Order, and they were coming in to take over the Confederacy that was there. I don't mean the Southern Confederacy, you silly goose. I don't mean that. I mean Turtle Island Confederacy. I mean the original government that was here. And do you see how, if I get my head out of the way, do you see how this flag is the same symbol as this? Can you see it? It's the same thing. That this is the American government trying to take over the Iroquois Confederacy by rebranding it. It bought the corporate logo from the Iroquois and it rebranded it, and then it shamed anyone who tried to say Confederacy. You can't say the word Confederacy. If you say the word Confederacy, someone's going to call you racist. And the irony here is that the fucking Indians invented the word Confederacy. They fucking invented that word. And that the Wetiko came and we're calling the people that use the word Confederacy racist. Check it out. White guys from New York City are saying that anyone who lives in Turtle Island who tries to say that this is a Confederacy is fucking racist. And I just explained to you American history. That's literally all of American history right there. And that this is how you take over a nation. You rebrand it. And how do you rebrand it? You got to go here, man. You got to go here. You got to start with Moses. Moses, look at his lady. She's like, my husband is going to propagandize the shit out of your husband, and then your husband's going to beg me to give you alms, and I'm going to be, oh, okay, I'm a nice person. Since my husband propagandally butt raped your husband, I'm going to be a nice person to you. And that's kind of what happened. So those weren't the exact words. It's not an exact quote of Mrs. Beach, but it's pretty close. I mean, there's like a lot of colloquialisms in the translation, but that's roughly it. You can take my word for that. I would never lie during a stream. Never. Feel free to correct me in the comments if I'm wrong. Someone had a disagreement about last day's stream saying that the biological similarities are not as great as I was putting forward to you guys. So that's something to consider. I still think we had gills, though. I'm going to fight him on that. No, we had gills. As a baby, you had gills. You did. That's why some people are named Gil. The woman's like, his name's Gil. He's telling me his name's Gil. I don't know. He's telling me his name's Gil. November 21st. Let's get back in context, James. Come on. Woodstock, 1861, right? This is April 20th, 1861. You're watching James True Live. Good to see you guys. And that right after that, on November 21st, same year, 4 months later, excuse me, this guy, Henry Jarvis Raymond. This was like your ultimate Republican, sovereign, like hands off me, don't tread on me kind of Republican. And he actually founded the New York Times, believe it or not. He was in the local government there, and he actually had dibs on America's first Gatling gun. He had dibs on it. That before anyone else had a Gatling gun, he had one in the office of the New York Times. I'm not exaggerating. I'm not. Okay, the beach lady, maybe she didn't say it exactly like that because I really want you to believe what I'm saying right now. So I'll go ahead and say, Beach didn't say, well, my husband's going to propaganda the shit out of your husband. But she did. It was a lot more eloquent. She was like, my husband death will propagandize your husband's family and they will, you get it. But this guy actually used a Gatling gun to secure freedom of the press. And if you want to know how he got the Gatling gun, I'm telling you that I think that this is the underlings of what the real government is. That you're seeing the same Rothschild idea of I will grab a hold of the wires of telecommunication. And just as Rothschild made so much money, obviously this made sense to do it elsewhere, which is why within 5 years this should be suspicious. Within a squirrel fucking nailed me today, by the way. But within, if I get like squirrelitis, it happened today, Friday, September 20th. He's not said sorry. He's actually pissed at me. I don't know how this works, but within 5 years, 2 of the major wires that controlled all of the information of the people that raised you and me were established, and they didn't really have a lot of competition. I mean, they really didn't. In fact, it already was clear to them that if they kept intel in the Mexican-American War, they would do better than anyone else. And if you're trying to establish control over a population that you just stole from another population, the first thing you're going to want to have is propaganda. It's the first thing, which is why the AP started in Montgomery, Alabama, and had an underground railroad. I shit you not. The first underground railroad was about information, and it was transmitting through secret code the messages from not just the war, but how to actually take over this land that had a lot of people that were like, hey, I kind of like the government that was here before. They were like, shut up. We will send Miss Beach after you. She's like, oh, we'll come propagandize the shit out of here. And then we opened up Cherokee schools. So it's like, what I'm saying is not actually far away. I'm just saying maybe Mrs. Beach didn't say it. That's really all. This dude shot people with a Gatling gun to save the New York Times. 2 years later, mob riot. Why? Because New York said, oh, we need to draft you. We need all you fucks to get a free hat. Because, you know why? Because the fucking Iroquois Confederacy isn't going down as quick as we want. It turns out there's these real pain in the asses down in Tennessee. in northern Georgia called the Cherokee, but they weren't called the Cherokee then. But there was just a bunch of insurgents living in the woods. And not only were there insurgents there, I think they were actually rioting in New York. I don't think the riot was about the draft, ladies and gentlemen. Why? Because I don't think a lot of people believed that you could just do that. First of all, you had to be literate. Then you had to find a newspaper. Then after you found the newspaper, you had to read it. Then you had to have a neocortex that was like worried. Like for you to be responding to threats that involve the future requires you to be kind of smart. You have to be kind of consciously lit. And a lot of these people were just coming out of slavery. I'm talking about just in their thoughts. Most of America was founded by anyone who the queen was like, look, let's take the lowest level of people we can, put them on a boat and send them over here. Let's find the ones that are least fitting into our society. Yeah, there's a lot of like upper echelon settlements too, but most of it's just like prison people coming over here to develop the infrastructure that could be come in and taken over later. And then that's what happened during the Civil War. So during these riots, really what you're looking at is the true, can we save the Confederacy was happening on this day, July 13th, 1863. And the answer is no, you can't. That the Times with their Gatling guns, with their communication, we want to instill that every single person is free. Well, James, that sounds like a nice thing. Yeah. Except for the Revenue Act. You see, the very year that they declared everyone free is the very year they declared that everyone who's free pays taxes. And so the entire idea of liberating the slaves is actually just creating a tax base, creating a tax farm. And the only way you're going to insist that everyone has to pay these taxes is you're going to have to give away a lot more hats. And the Union Army was formed. It was formed from that whole idea. But it didn't quit there. I had to get through all that because I want you to see the momentum just kept going. Because that AP and that Reuters, it became the telegraph and the telephone system. And the sole purpose of that was to take over America one wire at a time, to set up as many transfer stations for the distribution of propaganda as they possibly could, as fast as they could, as quickly as they could, because this would ultimately be all that they would need in order to establish control. Why do you need to threaten everyone with guns when you could simply whisper rumors into their ear over a copper wire? And if you waited long enough, you could get to their children. And if you had enough vision to see how powerful this is, and I think a few people did, Rothschild would be one of those, although I've said before, I think he would probably be the weakest among them because we see him. But that you would understand that the real battle over America would be this. It would be this. And so the quest to destroy the Confederacy is done with copper. Continuous copper connecting everyone at the same time. There are some really cool people on Substack. I don't mean to limit it to all, but one of them's name's Albert. And Albert sent me this movie that I'm not going to show you because it's like a Hollywood movie in the copyright. It's also not exactly, if you check on Patreon or if you check in the link, I don't have the link right now, but if I can find a way to give you this link, it's more about like a copyright thing. Or if you come to Substack, it's like right there. But the point is this. This isn't me. Someone showed this to me. Albert did, but also he showed it to me from a video that someone else made. And I think this is related to what I'm just sharing you. In 1968, so 100 years later, AT&T invented the number 911. They were the ones that actually said the number is going to be 911. And in 1968, the Twin Towers, the construction of the Twin Towers started to raise up from the ground. They had done the basement a couple years earlier, but the construction itself started to go above ground. It started to be raised, so to speak. Number 3 in 1968 was the first use of the word coronavirus was used in print. And I just want to walk through these things really quick. Here's an advertisement on May 2nd, 1968 for the towers. And they're called The Mountain Comes to Manhattan. It's got a plane in the towers. Forgive me if some of you guys have already seen this, but the point is that this is a morphic resonance. It's a story where people are concerned. A pilot is concerned. Yes, the Port Authority of New York is trying to build a trade center, which according to this pilot adds an additional risk. And so with the launch of these towers, the resonance, the Oracle mythology, something I talk about here a lot, the Oracle mythology was saying, dude, a plane's going to hit these things. And that's fine. I don't need you guys to believe that in the Oracle mythology thing. I think it's more about resonance. But please don't think that means you have to, I could be wrong. I think that there are coincidental resonances that make more sense versus there's like one guy who is like writing all this shit down and he's got like Nathan the numerologist, right? Who follows him around on his plane, and he's like, Nathan, what's the best form of attack for when I blow up a building? And Nathan's like, oh, it'd be great if you were to blow up a building that starts with the letter G and it happens on this. I don't think it happens that way. I think it's much more profound. I think it does happen, but I think it's much more profound. Don't worry, you can still have evil people in the world. I just don't think evil people are using numerology. I think that the fact that they're feeble isn't necessarily proof of that. Yeah, there's a lot of resonance that happens, absolutely, but we don't necessarily know that that's evil. Most of the time we're watching gardeners just tending to their own shit. They're going to have some fights with other neighbors. It's going to be stuff like that. It will always look like evil to us because we're not at that level. The same thing would happen in your yard. If you go to mow, some of you maybe mow your yard. I don't know. Hey, takes all kinds, right? And that would be considered evil if you were living in the grass and you're like, that fucker killed all these caterpillars or whatever it is. So it's okay to feel that way, but at the same time, even that is more of like an emotional limbic reaction to what's happening, when really you're just looking at two people that are just trying to control the wires that control the world. And so you're going to think, well, whoever wants that most is probably going to win. And whoever wants that most is probably going to have to do some fucked up shit to get it. Whether or not they plan all this numerology, in my mind, the environment itself has this built into the symbolism of this place. I'll just move on. I just want you to decide is all. This is June Almeida, photographed in 1968, the very year that she co-authored. She was the leading author on this paper in Nature magazine, and it named coronaviruses as recognized as an informal group by these different virologists. And that using negative staining and avian infectious bronchitis virus has a characteristic electron microscopic appearance resembling that of a moxovirus, then goes on to describe what looks like bursts and basically describes what we think of as the coronavirus today. And there's more though, because this movie I'm telling you about, what's so good about Feeling Bad, is a movie with George Peppard, fucking A-Team, right? Dude, Hannibal on A-Team. Plays an artist living in New York, and he gets a bird flu. A weird toucan flu comes in, and everyone starts to wear masks, and everyone starts to freak out. And they end up gassing the whole city. And it's very resonant. It's very resonant about what's happening right now. It's very resonant. And that's all I want you to know is about the resonance. I don't need you to decide which is which. You can decide. Let me know in the comments. I mean, it's fine. I'm just saying that, as I said before, the vertical climb began of the Twin Towers in 1968. I just wanted you to be able to see that yourself. During this time, Bell Systems had a Luciferian logo. It was this guy. It was much more honest then. It was, look, we want to conquer the world with our wires. And during the Bell System long history, AT&T was at that time the world's largest telephone company, the world's largest cable television operator, and a regulated monopoly. At its peak in the 50s and 60s, it employed 1 million people. Its revenue ranged between $3 billion in 1950 to $12 billion in 1966. In 2005, AT&T was acquired by Baby Bell and changed its name to AT&T Incorporated. AT&T finally dissolved legally just this year on May 1st. Isn't that interesting? Just this year. It's as if the entity AT&T came, it was here, it needed to wait until these things that I told you about and that have happened, and now that they've happened, it's able to close, and the symbolism is done. One of the things that gave Bell Systems so much power was this concept of one policy, one system. And that really, this was the only opportunity where you could have a blatant telephone monopoly in the world. That the idea of connecting the place with wires almost elicited the idea that there would be one central control. If you think about railroads, it's kind of the same thing. It's like, how do you do that with like laissez-faire politics? Not that the politicians were even trying that. This is just more the myth when you were a kid. Oh yeah, we were trying to keep everything fair. And it's like, yeah, that's a good story. And I think what was really happening is like I said, the government is letting go and saying, look, we don't actually control, we don't control things because you guys control the propaganda. And I think this letter by Woodrow Wilson really says it all. It gave the government everything. Woodrow Wilson claimed that the Interstate Commerce Commission, this was the idea of breaking up this single monopoly, and that it was done voluntarily. Think about it. The company that controlled every single form of communication, Woodrow Wilson is praising because they voluntarily gave up all that power and gave the president more than they could have even hoped for had they taken him to court. And here's the letter. Dear Mr. Attorney General, thank you for letting me see the letter from the American Telephone and Telegraph Company. It is gratifying that the company should thus volunteer to adjust its business to the conditions of competition. I gain the impression more and more from week to week that the businessmen of the country are sincerely desirous of conforming with the law, and it is gratifying indeed to have occasion, as in this instance, to deal with them in complete frankness and to be able to show them that all that we desire is an opportunity to cooperate with them. The President of the United States is suggesting that all he wants them to know is that he, as the president, has a desire to cooperate with them. So long as we are dealt with in this spirit, we can help to build up the business our country upon sound and permanent lines. Cordially and sincerely yours, Woodrow Wilson. And so the government falls to the media, to the company that controls all the data. And in order for the hidden hand to become the hidden hand, Ma Bell has to break up. It has to be busted. And so the slaughter of Ma Bell is carried out on the media. And strikes ensue. And all of the bad press that you see, I think, was personally inserted to allow the embedding of this deeper form of government to set hold. And this was all the way back from the Civil War, but all the way up through 100 years later. This is all taken past. I skipped a lot of room on purpose. And so the principle of on the Bell Highway of one policy, one system, universal service has led to what we have right now. It's where we have right now is because of that very system. And so when you have half the world saying fucking Muslims and you have the other half the world saying fucking Jews, then that's checkmate for New World Order, isn't it? I mean, that's just checkmate. Jerome Albert, I'm gonna skip that one. A few other things that AT&T did. Some of you guys aren't programmers, so you're not going to think this is impressive, so I'll be quick. But AT&T invented the first C compiler. This is pretty big. Literally every piece of software that you've probably ever run or seen or encrypted or compiled or opened or shared or downloaded or thought was protected was made by one company, and that company was AT&T. In fact, they started the first Unix operating system was founded by AT&T. Me, a very big fan of open source software. And that after doing the research for this show, I realized, fuck, all open source software is controlled by the two towers. Here's a map of all that software showing you all the software that is Unix based. Some of you might be on a Macintosh, and just to show you the size here, down here, little tiny box here is Mac. Most of everything else you see is basically every single thing that runs on the internet. Now, things have certainly changed over time, but Unix is still pretty much the one world government of software. And you can compile your own version, of course, but deep down, you're going to be utilizing a kernel that you and I didn't write. And not only that, most of us aren't going to really be able to see what kind of protocols are in there. I'm talking about resource intensive. We'll get to that. There's too much to go over with the software side. But in Nashville, some of you might have heard of the Batman building. And the Batman building is the AT&T building. And the AT&T building in Nashville, this is the tallest skyscraper in Nashville, has two towers on top of it. And so the T and the T are kind of there. You have an alpha tower and you have another tower that's not alpha. That the AT and the T is the two towers. And if you just do the S, oh, by the way, this same building was bombed. It's actually right around the corner, but the same structure. We'll get to that in a sec, don't worry. And the symbolism is pretty cute. There's 33 stories in this AT&T building. It's the street address is actually 333 AT&T Way or something like that. But it's 333 Commerce. Oh, 333 Commerce is what it is. And I know you guys have probably seen this before because this place gets struck by lightning all the time. It's kind of famous for it. Yeah, well, this should be it. Let's see. You're watching James Drew Live. Right, and I'm sure you've seen this meme, but I don't know if you realized how deeply related it was to the two towers. And symbolically, this is quite a hey, look at me. Symbolically, right? That's a pretty big hey, look at me. And the other people noticed, of course. Other people noticed. Let's see, 2020. So I think the government probably closed March 22nd, 2020. And it was done with a bill that was passed on March 22nd, 2012. So Obama signed the DPA and then Trump used it to, I think, do the same thing that the Confederates did, where all of a sudden we had a 33-star flag, and that 33-star flag was in the same diamond pattern as the Haudenosaunee, the Iroquois Confederacy. And that just happened again on 3/22/2020, but instead we installed this fifth arm of government, the Department of Public Health or Safety, or you could call that the fourth arm of government if you want. And then the fifth arm of government is this Department of Clean Energy. And that just like you were promised rights back when Thaddeus Stevens was saying, hey, we're going to have to confiscate your revenue, but we're doing it because we're going to free all of you. That's literally what came out of his mouth. Hey, we're going to free all these people by making everyone pay taxes. That the same thing's going to happen with, we're going to free you with universal basic income, hospice care. I'm sorry, health care. Sorry, got to get the words right. It's not hospice care, James. It's health care and clean energy. That those things will be the same things that are utilized when you believe that, oh, well, we have to pay for these New Yorkers who want free hats and free guns to go down and kill natives because the natives are racist. That exact same thinking is just was done on 3/22/2020. It's actually why I saw it. It's actually why I pointed it out to you guys. And I wasn't the only one. This always struck me as odd when this happened because of when, but in in 2020, an employee of AT&T, rumored, I should say, to have set this bomb off. And that it's inside the RV that's right here. There's an RV right here. And that explosion took place on Christmas morning. And that place was here. Right here where the red arrow is, right here where this little red arrow is where that bomb went off. But then, if I can scroll, here's the AT&T Towers building. You see? So the bomb went off here, but the two towers was right here. And that guy, like I said, he was an employee of AT&T. And that turned out to be a pretty big node of communication. I think that's why he chose that one. By the way, he drove in with an RV that had a broadcast speaker of a woman's voice, a computerized woman's voice saying, evacuate, evacuate. There's a bomb, evacuate, evacuate. It was done at such a time, at such a day where, I'm not trying to justify this. I just want you to understand the psyche. This guy actually wasn't trying to kill people. He picked the one time when he could do it, when it would least, and that's even if he did it. I don't know what happened, because I think that if you were trying to stop the government from signing us our country away on 3/22/2020, and you were just, it could just be we're just watching pirates do what pirates do. I think there's a lot to this. If you want to look at Parkland, if you want to look at this guy, you're going to see the same thing. Both cases, someone called the FBI and says, hey man, I think there's a guy about to set a bomb off. And that instantly, as soon as that happened, the FBI moves in, and they're not like, hey, we got to stop the bomb. A lot of times it's more of like, who else can we implicate? How do we convict him if he doesn't actually blow up the bomb? That all these things have been seen. We know this through prior ops, that these have been true. So when I look at an event such as Parkland and I see that, well, why the fuck was Secret Service there? And then I found out later, like a year later, that there was a call about him, that I just more think it's about, oh, we must swoop in. Federal government doesn't waste resources. I'm talking about the pros, the professionals don't waste resources. And having a school shooter is a viable resource. You can sell that. You can sell that technology to someone. Someone will buy. What do you mean you got it? Yeah, I got a shooter. He told me he's going to call. And I think we could send him a text message. Yeah, I think we could send him a text message. And I think just a text message, if it's like a random text message from, I don't know, call him 810. He'll just put it together. He'll just finish it up and put it together. And that's what the AT&T guy was doing. Why would you fucking design a building that looks like the Bat Building? Why would you design a building that's always hit by lightning because that's the tallest thing in the world? Why would you give it so much 33 symbolism? Unless you maybe were hoping something like this would happen. We know how people behave. The guy that set this bomb off isn't exactly like unique, or at least we think he's not. So what happens? You ring the bell. If you do it between two towers, you end up with a one world order. Look, you ring bell, smoke between two towers, one world order. You see the T in the T now? One of the globes is Earth. The other globe is Moon. One of the towers is Joaquin. The other globe is Boaz. Here's two towers. One's the Alpha Tower. So Alpha T and T. That's Joaquin and Boaz. I can't believe I never saw it before. If you guys think I'm reaching, let me know. I think that if you consider that this is Bell Labs and you consider just how far this went back, I think this is clearly a sign of, yeah, this would be how they would operate. It still is. Because these people own the world. They own the world because they own the wires that touch the world to the world. And you might think Google owns more of this. No, it's actually not Google. Google owns a lot, but it's not all of them. I gave a stream where I kind of talked about this 9/11 resonance, but just real quick, the DNA is 10 based. It has a 10 windings. And if you wanted to resonate 10, you would want to hit 9 and 11 on both sides. And if you are a resonant magician, and I think these people are, because I think that's really the only magic we can talk about, is resonance magic. And that in order to resonate something, you're just looking for a holographic. This is why I tell you, I don't think that someone has to plan this. It makes our world less magical if you insist that someone has to plan it. I think it's more about intuitively trusting your sixth sense. This thing we were talking about, the ancient pathways are there, that blind sights hurt if you do not have enough confidence in that. And that simply you just notice where the resonance is, and then you just check a few coincidences, and then you're sort of like, oh, there's a lot's going to go on during this day. And so you're able to predict things that way. What is happening in the world right now? Lebanon. Battery, high explosives placed in what we're calling a pager. Pagers being set off. And one thing for sure is we know it's Israel. Everyone knows it's Israel. And every single thing that's ever happening bad right now is Israel's fault. Some of you guys remember my stream where I said Macron is sucking on purpose. And I laid out for you why he's sucking on purpose. There's no water in the fountains. It's just like a giant mosh pit of just bullshit, of just total hell in France. And he's doing that on purpose, and Israel's doing the same. And I've told you guys before, but just to repeat, I think that Israel is purposely trying to look as bad as they can because they're going to the One World Court. And the One World Court is going to punish Israel. And in order to punish Israel, they are going to give you what I just told you about. Universal basic income, free public free public health care, and what we'll call green energy, which is, you got green? Then I will give you energy, right? So it's Thaddeus Stevens all over again. Thank you for watching, James True. And if you want to know who these really are, it's just, this isn't Rockefeller. It's the dude who owns Vanguard, or the founder of Vanguard. It seems like Robert Kogel or some shit like that. He's just got the same Rockefeller look in his face, right? Like, I will give me your blood. And, I don't need to tell you this, but, Vanguard and BlackRock own a lot of shit. They own a lot of shit. I think it's a coincidence they happen to own pharmaceutical companies, personally. I think that's just I think conspiracy theorists are kind of reaching there. Why would an all-powerful government trying to establish the World Health Organization to insist that all of you have a right to universal health care as long as you conform to a vaccine schedule? Why would they use that to take advantage of people? Like, it's so silly. Conspiracy theorists just crack me up. My God, those guys. So Israel's praying to God right now because that's the whole point, right? Earlier this year, who'd they pick? They picked South Africa. Think about this. They picked South Africa. They let South Africa say, we accuse you. J'accuse, say South Africa. And it's not going away, right? It's building up. This happened in January. What's happened since? Israel's gotten worse. It's gotten worse, not better, right? You're being played, my friends. This is the stage. You're being played. You are being played. Look at the press coming out. Guys, look at the pictures, because you understand the people who get to publish the pictures are the ones that get to tell the story. And the story is going to be, most of the people are only going to see pictures anyway. They're not going to read the story, let's be honest, right? So this is coming. Like, how that's working. Top World Court says Israel occupation is illegal. So you got to suck for this to work. The UN has to suck. The UN has to be helpless. This is the key. The UN has to be helpless. And that the UN's going to say, oh, our hands are tied. Oh, if only I could. Oh, I'm China, the most powerful nation in the world. If only I could free my hand. But I can't. Oh, no, we need a one world government. Oh, no. Don't make us start a one world government, is what they say. And it kind of happens. Let's take a little. Yes, indeed. The ampersand amplifying the sound. Always good to see you polymathing. Exactly right. I agree. The ampersand between the two T's is just saying and. So not only you have twins, but you're just and. You're letting freedom ring. Do you hear this? You're letting freedom ring. Now we're going to change gears. Because it's one thing for me to tell you what's already happened. It's quite another for me to tell you what's about to happen. Feel free to come back and burn me on this. It's fine. I can take it. If it turns out I'm wrong, that's okay. It's okay. I will be wrong again. And this is why I encourage you to have a strong ego so you can afford to be wrong. Some of you have corrected me, and maybe I haven't had enough electricity at the time to be corrected. So hopefully I'll have enough electricity if this is wrong. Purple Mountain, October 14th, 2024. Something's going to happen. I don't know what, but something's going to happen. And I just want you to be aware of these themes. Purple Mountain, Purple Mountain, 10/14/24. Something about a comet. Something about maybe 10 white stars versus 14 yellow stars. Something about maybe the moon. Maybe the moon on the comet. Something about a blue beam or some kind of like purple alien thing. Something's going to happen on 10/24. And I don't mind being wrong, but I'm just calling it. I'm calling it because it just, for me, remember how I told you that it's not about, you don't need a numerologist this is why I don't like the people that are like, I found a sacred book that no one else saw, and I'd show it to you for $99.95 a month. It's like, fuck you, dude. Esoteric does not mean rare. Guys, listen to me. Esoteric does not mean rare. You are being duped. Esoteric means it is everywhere, but only a few people see it. It sounds so close, doesn't it? Rare. And people are selling you, I have a secret paragraph that no one else has seen, and I'll show it to you. And that's not esoteric. That's called hoarding and mind control. Esoteric would mean it's all around you, but only a few see it. That's what esoteric means. And when you have enough ego and you could be wrong or you could be challenged, all these things I'm still working on myself, you can start to tune in to your dowsing, your tuning fork, and it becomes more confident when you take chances and fail. This is actually how it's more confident, which is why I'm taking a chance right now and saying, I think there's probably going to be something big. Comet C2023A3, called the Suchenshan Atlas, is expected to be visible in the southwestern evening sky around October 14, 2024, one day after its closest approach to Earth. The comet may be low in the sky, but it could be visible in a dark sky. If optimistic predictions are correct, it could become as bright as Comet Hale-Bopp in 1997 or Comet Hyakutake in 1996, and could be visible even in light-polluted cities. It could also have a long tail if viewed from a dark location. The name, Suchinshan, is the Wade-Giles transliteration. Wade-Giles is Angels of the Centerfold. The Wade-Giles, they were like sort of like pre-Hall Notes. They wrote a J. Giles band, actually discovered the comet. I'm just kidding. That didn't happen. That didn't happen. But everything else did, okay? But just that little part about Giles, I don't know why I went there. But that Giles transliteration corresponds to the Pinyin Zijinshan, which is Mandarin Chinese for Purple Mountain. For Purple Mountain's majesties. And that you see the path of this comet coming in with the tail. It'll be right between Corona. Here's the gauntlet, by the way, I was telling you guys about. If you look at Corona, you'll notice it's a gauntlet. Native American term for you run through the gauntlet, and if you survive, if you come out the other side, right? See, guys, you can interpret these things as horrible, or you can interpret these things as like massively up-leveling. You get to choose. I don't gain anything by recruiting you to think positively. I just simply see a lot of people suffer, and I'm like, hey, if you took your back and just went just like that, maybe you'd see something different. I don't even need everyone to get on board. I think ultimately, if people were more on board, all of us would have better time, because I think that overnight we wouldn't give our electricity away. That's what I think. But I'm an irrelevant dude that people say or whatever. I'm just a little guy who calls things. And I wish I had enough ego to brag about things that I've called right. But I've called some things. I do have ego, just not right now. I want to get through the rest of the show. This, I know this is tricky, but there's a spectrum between mythology and reality, and you're looking at it. And when you start to unravel what's really happening around you, the symbolism, it's just scaffolding. It's centrioles. We discussed this yesterday. It's the crystalline, translucent scaffolding that holds the cell together. And those are archetypes. And when I hear some of the archetypes being discussed as fraudulent, like last time with Jesus, it just makes me want to kind of shake my head, because they don't have to be, there's nothing that has to be bound in reality. If something's bound in reality, that doesn't give it more significance. I know that you think it does, but it's just when you really start to unwrap what reality is, it's a majority rule. Who had the first wire and gets to declare the propaganda, and who gets to challenge the propaganda, and more importantly, who gets to defend the propaganda. And ultimately, over academia, that's really what it is. We'll be going a lot more into the Christ. I think we need to start over with that. So I think maybe next time we'll go into that. It's a very powerful archetype that goes a long way back. If I had more time, I'd do it now, but this is probably a good time to close it. So I want to thank you for being on James Drew. Running a little bit late today. Encourage you again to join Patreon if you want. And yeah, thanks for stopping by. Let me know what you think in the comments. Let me know what you think about predictions. If you have any more data for me, please let me know. I encourage you to follow me on Substack, because Jerome, another cool guy, is looking through the Bill Cooper. According to Jerome, Bill Cooper said that there's going to be something big happening in October of 2024. And when I saw that, I was like, dude, I've been talking about this Comet on 1024. Maybe they're related. So if you want to stay tuned, you could join Substack for that. Thank you so much, you guys. Appreciate you. Thanks for being here. James Drew Live.